Okay. All right, I'm going to give everybody a second to all get logged in, but let me go ahead and first start off by saying welcome. We are so excited to have all of you guys joining us today for this very special webinar that we have planned. Later on, you guys are going to meet our incredible partners over at HMR, OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting, Physician Life Care Planning, as well as Fox AE. We love working with all of these wonderful groups. So later on, you'll get a chance to meet and hear from them about all the great work that they do. And I want to thank everybody so much for working with our partners, because in return, it helps support Connectionology, and we can continue doing all of these great webinars just for you guys. Also, I wanted to make an announcement that we are moving forward. We got an amazing live seminar planned in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is happening almost a month from today. There's still time to go ahead and register. This is going to be a very special seminar out on a 1,000-acre ranch in Jackson Hole, which is gorgeous during the most beautiful time of year. We have speakers like John Romano, John Gomez, Keith Mitnick, you name it. We're all going to be there, and you're going to have a lot of one-on-one time with everybody. And the topic is going to be all about pain, suffering, and damages. So bring your families and come out and meet us in Jackson Hole. You guys can sign up on the website, connectionology.com. All right, now we got a lot we're going to be talking about today. I encourage everybody to ask questions. It's a little bit easier if you put it in the Q&A box, and Jessica's going to keep an eye on those for you guys. But I really hope that everyone has a great webinar. And let's go ahead and get straight to it. For those of you guys who do not know Jessica, she's an amazing trial lawyer. She works with John Romano out of the Romano Law Group in West Palm Beach. And she is actually a Palm Beach County native. She graduated from the Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. She's also gotten her Bachelor of Business Administration there as well. And then she also attended the Barry University School of Law in Orlando, Florida, which is where she actually graduated early and got her Juris Doctorate degree in 2013. But prior to working with the Romano Law Group, she actually served as an assistant state attorney, where she gained a lot of valuable information, or a lot of valuable and informative trial and litigation experience. And then from there, she actually joined the private sector, where she worked for a prominent civil litigation defense firm handling a lot of complex litigation matters. But currently, she focuses on representing all of her plaintiffs in catastrophic injury matters that include wrongful death, auto negligence, medical malpractice, premises liability, as well as products liability. And so this is why it also means today is the perfect webinar. Outside of all of her litigation experience, she actually serves as a co-chair for the Palm Beach County Bar Association Lawyers for Literacy Committee. And she also serves as a co-chair for the Palm Beach County chapter of the Florida Association for Women Lawyers, Justice Barbara Perriette, the Judicial Reception Committee. In addition to that, in 2017, she also served as a board member for the Lake Worth High School Alumni Foundation, as well as the Lake Worth Dollars for Scholars, which is a nonprofit organization that supports academic success in the community. So Jessica, we are so proud of you, and we are so excited because we're going to have such a wonderful webinar today, and we're glad to have you. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Ginger. I appreciate it. So today we have a fantastic presentation for you, and I would like to introduce Erich Breedlove, who is a forensic specialist at the Quality Forensic Engineering LLC. He has over 11 years of experience in accident reconstruction and forensic consulting. He has worked on hundreds of accident reconstruction cases over the years and specializes in collisions with automobiles, tractor trailers, pedestrians, motorcycles, and bicycles. His background includes detailed inspections of vehicles and scenes and analysis of electronic module downloads for both automobile airbag control modules and tractor trailer electronic control modules. He also has experience with 3D modeling and 3D simulation using technologies such as Pix4D aerial mapping, PC crash, and Faro laser scanning. Thank you, Erich, for being here today, and I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great. First, I just want to say I appreciate the invite and being involved just for my company, Quality Forensic Engineering, and for me personally. I think this is a great opportunity for everybody to share some information, ask some questions, and learn a little bit, and also have some fun. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll go ahead and get started. And we're just gonna start from the beginning. And we got the sound set up. Okay. So yes, my name is Erich Breedlove, quality forensic engineering. We're based out of Tallahassee, Florida. We have offices in Tampa, Jacksonville, and some other areas throughout the country. Basically, what we're going to be talking about today is just understanding and utilizing electronic data that's present in your vehicles that are part of your cases with crashes, whether it's auto or tractor trailer or both. And we just want to show some examples of some things that we can do, some things we've found, and maybe some things to look for or ask for when you're working on your cases that maybe contain some of this special information. So we'll move forward. Essentially we've got, automobiles have, event data recorders in them. Typically, this is the airbag control module. It's a part of the safety system that lets the car know to expel airbags, to lock seatbelt retractors, and to fire the safety systems in a car in a given collision. There's a threshold for this. You need a certain amount of energy to activate these systems to get a deployment event. There are lots of kinds of vehicles that have all one similar company or module that we download through. And I'll just give you an example. Bosch CDR is the primary download tool for most people in our industry. They handle all of these makes and models and also some others. 60–70% of vehicles on the road today can be downloaded with this one tool. It's fairly simple. And then at the end of this presentation, I'll be doing a live download of an ACM that I've got. I can just kind of show you one. We're going to be doing a download of this so you guys can see the process, see the output, and then we're going to provide you the actual download from it. So if you've never seen one, you're going to be able to see the whole process today and get a copy of a download that you can look at and review, ask questions about. So I think that's something that's going to be pretty fun. So with that said, I'm just going to move forward now. As I've said, it's a pretty simple procedure, but you have your nice wreck car and you end up with hiring somebody like me to come out, and I'm gonna go to the airbag control module, connecting with our module, the Bosch CDR tool, and it's as simple as plugging in, reading the data, and giving you a report to look at in PDF. So it's a very common thing. It's very simple, and I think some people, if you're concerned about the complexity of it, don't. It's for passenger vehicles. It's a very easy process. Why is it not advancing now? Okay. So to show that, we've got an example of a CDR module in a car, and this car is not that wrecked, so we're plugging into just the diagnostic port that exists in most major vehicles. You plug in, and it's as simple as plugging in, powering, and getting the information. Sometimes the crashes are a little more significant, so we have to go directly to an airbag control module, similar to what I just showed you. It's something that there's a specialized cable for each, and we maintain an inventory of them. And if we don't have one for your specific vehicle, we can order the one and get it here overnighted. But all ACMs have their own cable. And like I said, it's kind of a customized end that allows us to, directly communicate with any given module at any time. This is a sample of a download, just to kind of get an idea to show you what data you could be expecting, what you look for. If there's been an airbag deployment, the data should be stored, and the data should be locked forever. Meaning, if 6 months goes by, a year goes by, this thing sits in the junkyard, we should be able to get to it, get the data off from the crash, and be able to find a way to give you this report. If there's something called a non-deployment event, which maybe the energy of the crash just did not reach the level of the threshold needed to trigger, say, the airbag, you'd have something called a non-deployment event. This data may be stored for a long period of time. This data is not locked. So if the car is in another crash later, it can be overwritten. Some vehicles actually will overwrite data or erase data based on ignition cycles. So this is when the clock is ticking more so for you to get access to your vehicles and your crashes, get me to them before that threshold has been met and the data is gone forever.
Eric, I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
And just looking at this PowerPoint, I understand it's kind of hard to see the details of this report, but is that a standardized report? So you talked about doing the download in the end, and you're going to send out that report. So the data on this specific report, it's not really pertinent to your presentation. So anybody watching, don't get concerned because you can't see it. There's going to be several slides on here that do have information, and he'll go over it out loud, but you will receive the actual download at the end if you haven't seen one before, so you'll be able to take a look at it. But going back to the actual download, because you showed the car and how you plug into it, if it's a more serious wreck, is there any issues with spoliation if it's done prior to, let's say, a defense counsel getting involved, or even giving them notice, such as, it's pre-suit and you want to do the download to get some information? Have you ever run into any issues with spoliation, and not necessarily of the download information, but of the actual vehicle because of where it's located?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And that's something that we always are trying to be cognizant of, because we want to make sure that we don't put your case in jeopardy, right? We don't want to change the evidence in a way that is costly to you or us. So yeah, if the download is able to be done, and I'll back up, if the download is able to be done directly to a DLC port, this takes really no destruction, no change, no spoliation, really. You're just plugging into a diagnostic port and reading the data. If the crash is more significant and say we can't power the car, or this port is not communicating, we have to get to the module like I've showed here, and download it directly. This will entail some changes. And so this is something where we would have a conversation with you to understand, where this case is, what the strategy is, and where you guys are going with it, maybe the communication with the other side, to say, look, we're gonna access the ACM, here's the location. We try to do it in a way that we don't change anything, but sometimes there is some minor cutting of plastic trim, or removing of panels, and so that's an issue where we contact you guys, we speak with you about it, we discuss whether we need to let the other side know, we can videotape it. Most experts that are hired would advise their client, if you're on the other side of this, to say, as long as we don't care about the area, so if the occupant compartment where the driver was is not an issue in your case, and it can be changed, we can take the console out, or we can take a trim piece out to get to this. That's where we would have that dialogue to be able to understand, do you want us to have this, make these changes and do this now, or do we need to wait? And it's kind of a case-by-case basis, but we typically will try to avoid making any major changes to anything without the other side being aware.
Great, thank you.
And so, yeah, like she said, this is the standard report, and they vary. This one in this example is 23 pages long. You may get one that's 7, you may get one that's 60. It all depends on the year, the make, and the model of the vehicle, what features it supports, what features it has. And so there's a little bit of variability here, and a lot of this is data limitations, things that the data specifics to the data that it has, and what it means, the ranges. And then there's some other information like whether the seatbelt was being used, or how many events were stored, 1, 3, what kind of event was it. And so we'll get into a little bit more detail on some of the things that you'll find in these reports. And then, like I said, at the end, we'll have a download that I can do with questions, and we can look at every part of the download if you have any questions about it, and we can kind of expand on those things further. So this is a typical data chart, and this would be from a pre-crash situation before a deployment event, or maybe a non-deployment event, depending on the system. So you typically will get basic information of the vehicle, speed, brakes, whether they were on or off, throttle position, RPMs, seatbelt usage, accelerations, delta V's, G's, those types of things. And you can kind of see pretty clearly, you've got the different color coding here. You've got engine RPMs, everything kind of goes up. Then you have a delta V also, or a speed change, which is the green. This car kind of stays pretty level off. So it kind of tells you that there wasn't a whole lot of pre-crash activity. The service brake was even on at a certain point and then off. So this person, was not doing anything to change their speed really before this crash. And it helps us understand when you see this graphical way, but then there's also a tabular data that you can look at, which is kind of the same information again, but now you've got it in table format, so you can really understand, okay, in this instance, 5 seconds before the crash, you've got 23 miles an hour of speed on this vehicle. If you go all the way down to 1.1 seconds before, 1/10 of a second before the initiating event, they're going 22. In the middle there, they kind of were slowing down and they were speeding back up. So maybe this was a traffic situation where a light turns green and somebody starts to go, and then they had to get back on the brakes. I mean, there's lots of situations where this stuff happens. But this also has some interesting info with steering. You get steering input here. So now we can see that the steering wheel is straight, 0 degrees of steering input. And so you're going to have a positive and a negative value on this. And so, assuming positive is left, you have a gradual left turn of the wheel here, 13 degrees, then later on at 66, then over 100. So maybe this person was going around a curve, because you see it kind of goes up and then it starts to go back to the right. And so maybe they were trying to avoid. This is all stuff that we can extrapolate. We can plot, we can do time, speed, distance, width. We can actually calculate what the steering wheel angle at the wheel actually means for the wheels, and we can plot the path of this vehicle. So we can go back in time 5 seconds and really understand everything this car was doing before impact. Then taking that with the post-impact data that we're going to get, we can actually kind of tie a nice little bow around what we think happened with this specific vehicle. When we get downloads from all the vehicles involved, and all of a sudden it's pretty simple to lay out some graphics and understand visually as well as analytically how these things occurred.
Eric, is it always 5 seconds before the crash, or are there different, is there a way to do more than that, or is 5 the standard? And if so, what's the significance of the 5 seconds?
So the 5 seconds, earlier on in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was some variability with pre-crash data. Sometimes it was a little less. In 2012, there was a standard passed, and I should have it, but it's like Part 593, I believe. And what NHTSA and the government said is basically, if you're going to record data, these are the categories that you have to record, and these are the increments, and this is the standardized information you must give. It's the minimum. And so one of those things is 5 seconds pre-crash data. Some vehicles only do the minimum. They only do exactly what is required by that standard. Other manufacturers do a little more. So that kind of varies. There are other vehicles out there with other software systems that sometimes will give you a little bit more pre-crash, but the standardized now from 2012 on is 5 seconds.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've talked about CDR, and that, like I said, that graphic that I had earlier shows that most of the vehicles on the road, most of the vehicles of the people that are in this meeting today, you guys are all kind of covered by that one module. Well, Hyundai and Kia, they have their own systems for each model, so each brand. And at the end of the day, it's the same exact type of information that we get from CDR. Hyundai and Kia are becoming more prevalent, so we actually have both systems now, so we can download both types. It's the same type of information. It's good data. This is a summary page, which is kind of unique to this software. You get a nice one-page shot with all the real particulars of the pre-crash or post-crash information, but it gets the same speed, brakes, airbag control module, or airbag anti-lock brake system information, throttle, steering data, all of that. So again, it's great information and allows us to really understand a lot about what happened. And again, if you got questions about what your client's telling you, they say, well, I was only doing this in this crash, you're going to be able to find out. And it's just as much to help you with your side of the case, with understanding what your risks are, your exposure is, with also understanding, are they telling the truth? Do they remember it correctly? Maybe they don't. It's a black and white way to understand that you have some facts that you can now lay in the sand and work through.
Eric, I currently have a case against Kia, and we're in litigation right now. And when they ran our EDR, it came back with no event recorded. So now what Kia wants to do is take the ACU to Canada, because that's where the supplier is. And they're saying that they can run a more detailed report that may show things that the EDR would not show. Is there any truth to that? Do you have any comments on that?
It's all possible. The way this data works, the airbag control module is not some computer that's autonomous with the vehicle that just knows this information. All of this system runs across something called the CAN bus, and it's basically like a stream of information. And my analogy is like a stock ticker. All these variables and all these data points are flowing by, and what happens with the airbag control module is, at the time of whatever this event that it detects, it locks down the information as close as it can to a timeline that matches with the event. So, and if it completes its recording and it is stable enough, then you will have data like this left over. Sometimes there's power interruptions. There is damage to the module itself. There's damage to reporting centers of the car, whether they be impact sensors or fuse panels. There's lots of systems in the car that can maybe malfunction. And while the report was not completed, the data was not captured in a complete way that this program can take, because essentially it's hexadecimal data. It's just all check digit stuff. And when you have all this information, it needs to be able to then complete it, encapsulate it, and then make this nice report for you to look at. And so if it couldn't complete all those steps, maybe there is no event, but maybe some of that information is sitting on the buffer on the volatile memory in that box. Because all this is a little circuit board with some memory in it and a little processor. So there's a good possibility that there could be information there, or there could be just gibberish there. It could just be a bunch of garbage code that means nothing. If it could come back and say that your client was going 140 miles an hour when it's clear they were going somewhere in the 30s. So sometimes you have to kind of weigh all of that, and downloads are not end all be all. You have to relate them back to the evidence that you know, whether that's evidence on the roadway, evidence damage to the cars, witness statements. It all kind of has to fit. So sometimes you get this information and you're like, great, I've got to download it. It's exactly right. Well, sometimes they're not exactly dead on right. One other example, while we're talking about automotive, general auto vehicles, there are certain manufacturers out there that had data available before you could actually use Bosch or Hyundai Kia to do a download on them. The manufacturer, if you're not familiar, is Nissan. And for certain model year Nissans from say 2006-7 till 2012, you can actually contact Nissan corporate. You get in touch with their counsel. There's a little checklist you complete, and then one of their engineers comes out and will do a download for you. Obviously, you have to pass that checklist. The vehicle has to be able to be powered. You have to verify certain things for them before they'll agree to come. And I think it's either $700 or $800, and they send their engineer out and you get a download. So what those downloads look like, very standardized, very similar to what CDR has, except like she asked earlier, we actually get 7 seconds of pre-crash instead of 5, which sometimes it's really useful. I can tell you a story. This case was a guy driving to work, and he was adamant that he had a green light. That's not necessarily something we can tell from a download, but he also said, I'm adamant that I was going exactly 30 miles an hour or just under when I got hit. Sometimes we get told that and we're like, okay, but we kind of just put it aside because we know we're gonna find out for sure. Well, we get this download and it's exactly what he said. It's 31, 30, 30, 30, all the way to 29. And then, at impact, he's instantly going 0 because he got broadsided by a semi truck. And so he was no longer going forward in that way. He was going to the left. But this Nissan download was critical for us because it helped us establish a timeline for when he would have been where in the road and when he was visible to the truck. And we worked out some timing sequence stuff after this, and we were able to determine that he was actually telling the truth about the green light as well. So without this factual timeline, it just makes things a lot more difficult. And being able to isolate this, get speeds and delta V's and everything, it answers a lot of questions for us. So we've covered the simple. Auto EDR data is great. It's plentiful, and there's some newer emerging technologies that we're going to cover later. But right now we're going to move to tractor trailers. So I'm sure we have a lot of trucking people in here. These are more complicated. There's lots of great information available, but it is something that is a little more specialized, and the data is not as handy for certain things that you'd want it to be. So effectively, every manufacturer has their own ECM engine combination, and then in turn, they have their own software that couples with that. So like before, when we have Bosch CDR and Hyundai Kia cover 95% of the vehicles on the road, each one of these manufacturers has their own software. So they're all a little quirky, they're all a little different. And there are 2 on this list, Mac and Volvo, that have to be downloaded by 3 forensic companies in the whole country. Those are situations where there's nothing we can do about that, and we have to contact with them. We have a relationship with one in North Carolina that we work with. And so for a Mac or a Volvo, we have to bring them in to do the download because we're not allowed to have the software. For the rest, we do have the software, and we're able to do that. I'm going to step through a couple of examples of some of the reports. Trucking data is a lot more broad. We primarily focus on last stops and sudden deceleration reports. So it's a little bit different than deployment event and non-deployment event and pre-crash. There's also other modules like brake manufacturers that we'll interrogate as well, Bendix and Wabco being the main 2. And sometimes we can get some other snapshot data or some other parameter data that tells us a little bit about what's going on in the crash. So for Cummins, you get, like I said before, there's sudden deceleration records, and then there's last stop. For an event to be triggered in a crash. So if you're an attorney here and you've got a trucking case right now, and you're wondering, okay, do I need to hire Eric to go download my truck? Well, you kind of have to ask yourself, what was the impact like, and try to get an idea of how significant it was. You basically need a 7 to 9 mile per hour per second deceleration or acceleration to trigger an event for a sudden deceleration record. And I know I'm throwing lots of words at one time, especially deceleration around, but what that means is they've got to rapidly stop or speed up really quickly in a tiny amount of time to trigger anything. Otherwise, there won't be data there. So if you have a pedestrian case where a pedestrian, God forbid, was hit by a semi, there's likely not going to be a last stop or a sudden deceleration record that helps us, especially the sudden deceleration part. Last stop is the most important in instances like this, because if the truck is driven to the point of the accident, the point of impact, and it stops, if it is not powered on or moved from that point, then technically we could try to get the last stop, and the last stop should indicate the sequence that happened immediately before the truck was turned off and stopped. A lot of times though, with truck crashes like that with no damage, the truck's immediately put back into service or it's driven home, and that last stop date is gone. So that leaves us with hoping for a sudden stop record that may exist. Most trucks hold 3 or 2, depending on the year, make, and model. And this is what they look like. You get speed, RPM, a lot of the same information from the cars, engine load, throttle, brakes, clutch, sometimes a little different. Whether there's a warning lamp, I won't tell you what that warning lamp is, but it'll tell you that there was one. But you actually get up to 60 seconds sometimes, in the case of this Cummins download, 60 seconds of pre-crash data, where you can see what the truck was doing for up to a minute before the collision happened. And you get a nice chart, like here over on the left, with speeds, with throttle, with brake, same thing with the tabular data here. Trucks do not report things like, were the lights on? Were they using turn signals? Was there steering input data? That's the advantage the cars have. Trucks they don't typically report that kind of information. There's a second, so let me back up. The other part of trucks is there's those reports that we were just looking at and that we care about, which is going to be the event data. On the other side of that coin is all the parameters and programming and generic trucking information, is kind of what I would call it, that lives on the other side of the software that we would use. This is going to get us things like all the time records, the fault codes, trip information, average RPMs, fuel mileage, what different systems are programmed to react at, like how many gallons of fuel it's used. 99% of this stuff is irrelevant for us, especially for accident reconstruction. But there are some little tidbits in here that might be helpful for you for understanding some things about the driver that you're trying to understand. One of the things, and I'll just kind of keep it here, you're going to understand immediately, a lot of these have overspeed and underspeed categories. And so say, we've had downloads in the past where they'll say, number of times this truck has gone over 80 miles an hour. Well, if you've got your truck driver in depot and you're asking him, is your truck governed, or do you ever speed, or are you a safe driver? And they say, yeah, the truck's governed at 66, 67. I'm a safe driver, I never speed. But then you have this data page from his truck, and it says they've gone over the 80 miles an hour 144 times. That's information I feel like you guys would want to know, because then you can say, well, I know you're saying that you're a safe driver, but here's this information, and this says otherwise. Why are you going 80 miles an hour, over 80 miles an hour all this time? It may give you some insight to the general practices of that driver, the safety of that driver. Moving on to Freightliner, same idea, same as Cummins. You have last stops and sudden deceleration reports. This is an example of a last stop. You can see that this last stop actually was one where the truck ran, and so it's blank. You have, no miles per hour. The truck rolled for a little bit and then stopped again. So in this instance, we didn't get, if there was a crash, this is not the crash. This is sometime after, maybe he was sitting there idling and then he rolled a foot or two and then stopped again and then shut the truck off. So this would be an instance where whatever existed before this is now gone because the truck was run after the incident. Again, no lights, no turn signals, no steering. Another example of the the ancillary data that maybe won't help us again, and this is kind of what I alluded to earlier. You've got trip activity. A trip can be from that day only. It could be for 3 months. It could be for the life of the truck. It just depends on what parameters were set up by the truck when it was purchased or by the mechanics that have worked on it. But down here, you can see, count of times where the truck was going above 71 miles an hour, 1,927 times. So like I said, you may find some valuable information here to help you ask some questions, but it's not necessarily something we can use for reconstruction. Another useful thing in this information is if you're looking at DOT records, and this is becoming a little bit less of an issue because of electronic logs and stuff like that. But if you're a driver, if you're unsure about when they powered the truck on, what time of day they were working, how long they were driving, you've got these nice usage charts that show here's the keys off, here's it idling, here's where it's running and driving. And you get total hours for the day, you get the totals for each column. So it's a kind of a nice way. And so you've graphical format here, and then the tabular format here. Again, it's a way to check to see if what your driver has logged is accurate for what the truck reflects. And so it's a good comparison. Caterpillar is another engine manufacturer. This one I don't have a whole lot of data on because Cat sometime in the mid 2010s stopped manufacturing engines for trucks, and so more and more of those trucks are kind of disappearing, going the way of the dodo, so to speak. And the data is very similar. There's hard brake events. There are last trip data. The one quirk with Caterpillar is they have the option to have this data turned on or not from the factory. And most of the cats that we plug into and download have that turned off. So there is no information. Unfortunately, the only way to know is to plug into the truck and see. And so it's kind of it's a coin flip, so to speak, because again, they have the functionality of their software. You can just go in there and say, no, I don't want you to record this stuff, and it won't. Okay, so the complicating difference with this type of data, and I've kind of already hammered on it a little bit. This data is not locked. Can be overwritten, even if it's a sudden decel record. I've had inspections where I've gotten to a truck 2 weeks after a crash. The truck was put back on the road, and I did the download, and I got sudden decel records from that truck. But the 3 events that I got were from about an hour before my inspection. So either he was having a heck of a time in traffic, people were cutting him off, or he was making sure that the sudden decel records that I saw were not the ones from the crash or from any time before that day, because everything from that day, if it existed, is now gone. And obviously the last stop record would also be gone. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes for why these things are erased other than a triggering event. And you can lose all this information. So the big message here is, and regardless of which side you're on, preserving these trucks is the only way from the point of the accident to get the information off later. If you let the truck go, if it gets put back into service, you're on a ticking clock, and the odds of you getting information later they just start to dwindle with every day, every mile that the truck is driven.
So Eric, just quick takeaways, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but what I'm getting is, so when it comes to a tractor trailer, it's hard stops versus crashes. So they're not necessarily crashes, but if there's a deceleration, that could also reflect as an event. But you want to download right away because it can be overwritten. So if they get it back on the road, your data could be lost. Is that correct?
Correct. That's absolutely correct.
All right, cool.
And I think this will be a good point for us to pause because I think Ginger needs to come back in.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, this has been really interesting so far, Eric. Really enjoying this. And by the way, if you guys have questions, be sure to put those in the Q&A box. So that way Jessica can keep an eye on those for you guys. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring in John with Position Live Care Planning real quick. And he's going to share with you guys a little bit more about what they do, which is a lot of incredible work. I think they work with, I think it's over 80, 85 different experts and doctors all around the country now. But he will be here in just a moment and tell you guys a little bit more about what they are doing these days. Hi, John.
Hey, Ginger, how you doing?
So good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit more about what you guys are doing over there at Physician Life Care Planning, because I definitely am so happy. I see you usually at all the different events that I go to around the country, and you guys are doing great work.
Yeah, we're definitely busy right now, and it's a pleasure, obviously, to be here with you. It's a pleasure to be a sponsor of Connectionology, our continuing sponsorship. Good to be with Eric and Jessica as well. For those of you who haven't worked with PLCP, we're a full service nationwide damages valuation company. We specialize in formulating compensatory economic damages. So we're talking about things like forecasting future medical care requirements, like life care plans. We also do vocational loss of earning capacity, as well as economic loss of earnings, as well as loss of household services assessments. I would say people would say we're different in that all of our life care planners are practicing medical doctors, and they're all board certified in physical medicine and rehabilitation as a minimum. Many of those doctors also have additional specialties like brain injury medicine, spinal cord injury medicine. We have several pediatric rehabilitation experts that do a lot of birth injury cases across the country. And I think when you kind of think about the physiatrist, really what's important about the physician and the physiatrist is that they have the education, they have the training, the skill, and that professional experience to really create a strong medical foundation for your damage model. And, on top of that, they also have the medical and legal capacity to independently formulate and defend opinions in a life care plan. Things like your client's diagnostic conditions, their life expectancy, their disabilities and impairments. And I would definitely suggest that also adds another layer of credibility to your damage model. So anyway, we love the opportunity to demonstrate the type of work that we do. I'm confident that our doctor is going to quantify your damages in a very credible, very comprehensive, and a defensible manner. And I think I heard you, Ginger, right when I was trying to get on, you mentioned that we had a number of physicians, but right now we have, I think we're up to about 80 physicians across the country. If anyone that's here would like to get the bio and CV, or would like to speak with one of those physicians that's closest to either your law practice or else your client, let me know. I'll be happy to provide that information or connect you with that doctor. Also happy to provide redacted samples of life care plans, even for a specific type of injury or age of your client, if that would be helpful as well. But I guess with that, Ginger, I'd turn it back over to you and say thanks. We really appreciate this. And I will, I guess, put my name in is it the comments or the chat section? My contact info.
If you could put your contact information in the chat box, that would be great. And then I'm going to make sure that I share everybody's contact information after the webinar. I'll email it to everybody as well. But yeah, keep up the great work, John. I mean, I'm so impressed, and we love working with everybody that you guys have brought our way as well, because we've even done some great webinars together. So looking forward to doing more of those.
Absolutely. And the in-person ones have been great too. So yeah, we look forward to working with you into the future as well. And best of luck to the rest of the presentation. So thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, John.
Bye, guys.
And now I see that Laura with HMR is with us. I guess you guys have seen Laura before, but it is so wonderful to have her here with us to share more about what HMR specializes in. But they have been with us from the very beginning. You guys are going to see Ted later on in the webinar, because he's going to do the coffee giveaway again, which is always the highlight of these webinars. But Laura, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here. I'm really enjoying listening to today's presentation. I see these reports come in, but I don't know all of the inner workings, so it's really neat to listen about all the details. So HMR servicing works nationwide. I'm just going to go right into it to let you know a little bit about what I do on a daily basis. We have 3 different types of funding. We have medical, case cost, and then we have cost of living or pre-settlement funding. So for me, what I do on a daily basis is I'm talking to my law firms about their cases. We're talking about what their needs are, what they think they might need in the way of medical care, and just a little bit about the case. That's kind of how we start our process, is usually a phone call. From there, I invite anyone to send their case information into HMR Servicing, into our home office through our website at hmrservicing.com. We're going to get all of that case background information and the documentation that supports the case. We're going to get it all into one place. And that allows our case managers and our underwriters to really scrub that information, look at it, put it together, determine what the next steps will be in terms of our funding. So it's really a team effort to get a case in and queue it up and then get it placed in line for care. We try to do that rather quickly. I've seen cases come in and they're approved same day, but typically we're looking at a 48 to 72 hour window, depending on what the case needs are. If it's an extreme catastrophic case, it's going to take longer. And that's given that we have all the information that we need. So, you know, what that means for me is I'm able to do virtually anything that a claimant may need, all the way from their medical care to helping them pay their mortgage, to looking at whether they have needs that cannot be negotiated through factoring. We may have to pay cash rates for certain medical care needs like psychiatry. That's always one that is very hard to place. So we want to find the best providers we can as well. And usually that means we have to make cash payments available in real time. And then lastly, we're able to assist our attorneys with their case cost needs, with life care planning, with medical experts, what have you. I know right now I'm working on a case that I've been on it for 2 years, and we're at the point where we're actually we're funding a life care plan with physicians' life care planners. And this particular firm always goes to physicians' life care planners. So it's really interesting to be on the webinar with them today. I can attest firsthand that they're amazing. But that's really it. I wanted to share what a typical day looks like for me. We never know where a case is going to go. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to help your plaintiff find their much needed medical care that they deserve, and also work with you at every step of the way. So if anyone has any questions, I invite you to reach out, and hopefully we can talk about your case.
That is fantastic, Laura. And thank you so much for even just working together with Physician Life Care Planning. I love hearing all the collaborations that you guys have going on. But John Romano, his entire firm, they love working with you guys. I know they handle a lot of cases with you guys as well. And I would just say thank you so much for everything that you do for helping all of the clients across the country. So keep it up. And don't forget to put your information in the chat box, because I know there'll be some people trying to reach out to you. So thank you. All right, and we will see you soon, okay?
Take care.
Thanks, Laura. All right, Jessica and Eric, back to you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Make sure we got it. Okay. So we've kind of concluded general tractor trailer downloads. So now we're going to start moving to some third-party systems that exist on these trucks. To give you kind of an idea of some other things to look for, to requested preservation, or just to let you know that these things exist, because sometimes, you know, I think you may be unaware.
Eric, before you go into that,
Sure.
you spoke about preservation, but just kind of going into a preservation letter before you go into each individual, can you just give me some common items that you would include, or you suggest that attorneys include in their preservation letters when it comes to tractor trailer cases?
Sure.
Or
well,
trucking in general.
Yeah, I mean, well, and we can start with crashes with cars. You know, obviously preserving the car itself, the physical evidence, and the same would be true for trucks. And then we'd also want, you know, to be able to preserve the access to the electronic data on the ACM, and or also the infotainment system, which is the radio, which you know, a lot of these new cars have these built-in systems with the GPS and the radio, and you can connect your phone to it. It's great, but there's actually information there, so making sure that's preserved. If the person was actually using a secondary GPS, making sure that is preserved. Cell phones, any electronic device that could have been present in the car, we're going to want to possibly interrogate in some way, shape, or form. With tractor trailers, it's kind of the same. It's preserving the truck and trailer. That's also something that we've run across. We've had some instances where we go to inspect a truck, and the attorney that we were working with didn't specify the trailer as well. So the trailer was put back in service, but it had damage on it, and we wanted to maybe do a brake inspection on it. So preserving all physical evidence involved in a crash is, you know, the utmost important. And I know, I'm sure most of the people in here are just kind of nodding along. You know, GPS, fleet management, any kind of fleet tracking device. A lot of these trucks now have, you know, drivers use dash cameras, either a secondary, you know, off the shelf that they've put in themselves, or a fleet management tool that the people that they drive for put in, such as a drive cam. There's so many variations of what could be there, and it all depends on how it's preserved and what their record retention policies are at the company that they're at, or the whatever service they pay for. Because if they're using Verizon Connect or Lytx like DriveCam, these things have to be preserved in the cloud for whatever their retention policy is. If you don't get the preservation out in time, they could say, "Oh yeah, we had video or we had data, but we only keep it for 30 days and it's gone now." So it's just knowing to ask for these electronic systems, and it's a pretty long list, but it's something that I would advise that instead of just putting all electronic data, try to specify some of these things out. Or ferret out whether these things exist on a given truck, because that's where I think sometimes things fall through the cracks. So the first group of third-party systems would be these GPS systems. And so there's a few different options. So we'll kind of go through them. You have PeopleNet, which is this device can be used for dispatch, for messaging with the driver, for their route information, whether it's navigation or just instructions. Information on their load, and sometimes GPS tracking of the vehicle itself on the other end. Sometimes these devices, like here on the left, are just somewhere on the dash or somewhere near the center console where the driver can see it. Sometimes you get to the truck and they're gone, but then you look behind the seat and you see some of the connections for it. We have lots of experience of trucks being completely preserved. And we go look at them and things, there's empty mounts, and there's a PeopleNet mount and it's now empty. So being really cautious and looking around all you can. Sometimes these things have antennas on the back of the truck. Sometimes there's modules, looking for anything that is not factory, and seeing if it connects to something. If there's a wire run from the back to the front and it's just hanging loose, was that the radio? Was that the CB radio itself, or was it a PeopleNet? Was it a Garmin? Was it just a car charger? We want to ask all these questions because you just don't want to miss anything that could just completely change the way that you're viewing your case. Another example is a Qualcomm. I know some of the newer ones of these actually have a big round dish-like satellite on the back of these trucks with a big antenna sticking out. So sometimes that's the dead giveaway that it has one, but some of the models don't require that, and it's all built in internal. And again, you can get everything from what the driver was doing that day, his hours, if he's logging his hours in it, his route, his speed, any and everything you might want to know could be present in these devices. And so it's just putting somebody on notice and making sure that you get the data later. Another interesting one to me, and it's kind of newer, Verizon Connect. They have a myriad of services, and and a lot of the bigger trucking companies are using these, and they're kind of customizable. So like you'll see in this example, you have a laptop or a tablet. It can also be run through a phone, and I think that some trucks are actually integrated with this in the dash itself. You get everything from what we would maybe be interested in, like the GPS pings or data, but you also get things like fuel efficiency and safety score. To me, safety scores are very interesting because if this person has a history of having a bad safety score, then that gets you onto whether the driver's properly disciplined, properly trained, and some of those issues. So, you also get some service records because it's hooked into the computer of the truck. So you understand was there problems with the truck? Was there maintenance that they weren't doing that they should have been doing? Did that contribute to your crash? So being able to capture and to pull down and understand all this information. Most of it may not help you in any way, but I think you're missing out on potential opportunities for knowing information that can't be refuted just by getting this information.
Eric, is GPS systems, is that something you can download, or do you have to go through a third party, or is that through the attorney that finds that information?
So it varies. GPS data like this, this would be housed on whatever the user portal is for the truck. So say, insert big trucking company, national trucking company here, they have an account with Verizon and all their trucks have Verizon Connect as an example. All of this data should be logged and preserved in some form or fashion in their account. And so that's something that you're going to have to get them to produce. I have had one occasion recently where the opposing attorney just let me thumb through the tablet, and I was actually able to find a way to export the data, and I was able to export it just with an email address. So in that case, I actually exported it to him because it was his truck. and then they actually produced that to us. I was on the plaintiff side in that case later. So I think this is something that's so new, there's going to be some changes, but as I can tell, there are some ways to get information off of it, off the device in the field, if it's still powered and works and has a cell signal and all of that. But even if I didn't do that, this should be able to be captured or preserved by whoever the account holder is. And again, some of that depends on what their account is and what they pay for, what matters to their company. Maybe they don't care about some of this stuff, so they don't ever save it. So I think it's kind of a case by case thing. The Qualcomm and the other stuff I've showed so far, those are all things that have to come from the other side. So whoever has control of the truck is going to have access similar to what I'm saying now. They're going to have to pull those records, that information, and produce them, because there's no way for us to plug in and get them.
All right. Do you find that most trucks, commercial trucking cases have a GPS in them?
I think it's more common than not, especially if it's over the road, over state line trucking. If it's the same day trucking in the same route, those are the ones that I think are less likely. But if it's national long haul, I mean, yes, it's very common. And kind of what I hinted to before with preservation, many times we inspect vehicles, we open them up, and there's multiple suction cup marks on the windshield. And that's something that I like to look for and point out for everyone to look for, because clearly there was something hung there. And the driver's often will say, "Oh, that was my phone mount. And I was using my phone. That's where I put my phone, so it's hands-free." That's fine, but I have no way of knowing that unless the phone mount's still there when I inspect it. So it makes me ask the question, what was there? Prove what was there. I mean, I've actually documented, I've had a case where a person said it was my phone mount. He produced the phone mount, and the suction cup was not the same size as the marks on the windshield. So I don't know what was there. Maybe he got a new phone mount. Maybe it was a GPS, a camera, who knows? But whatever was on that windshield was not there when I was present. It wasn't what he said it was. So again, it's just finding ways to figure out and isolate what could be possible. And that's where the preservation comes in, and making sure that everyone's adhering to it, because I think it complicates the issue for everybody when stuff goes missing like that.
Eric, we do have a question from the viewers.
Sure.
It says, what if the other side's expert gives you XML files? How do you appropriately access that data other than notebook mishmash? Can you ask them to provide this in another format without losing data? That was from Kathleen.
So the XML data, depending on what it's from, there's going to be a variation of possibilities. I probably would need to know more specifically, like what it's coming from. But yeah, it may only be able to be viewed in that format because that's the format it's put in. Most of these systems are not, even cars included, they're not dealing with language that we understand. It's some form of hex data, XML data, programmer language, for lack of a better word, that sometimes is readable to a point where you can kind of pick out details. But these programs, whether it's the truck software or the car software, is actually decoding it for us and giving us a readable printout or a report. So depending on what your data is, some XML data is viewable, playable. Sometimes you can convert that to HTML and view it in a web browser as well. It just depends on the data and what it is exactly. But I always ask for, usable information. So when you're requesting from the other side or they're producing data, if that's the native format, if that's the only format that he got and that's the only format that can be retrieved, then that is what it is. But so that's the first question you have to ask is this how you retrieved it? How did you retrieve the data? Where did it come from? What software did you use? How did you pull it? And if he's saying another form of software, then you're going to want what we're calling the native files from that software, because then we could hopefully plug them into our software and look at the same report the same way he did, and not just the XML data.
She added coming from both Bendix and CAT.
Okay, so Bendix data with the XML, we can actually work with Bendix and get an HTML report from that XML data. CAT, if that's how he captured it, CAT software is complicated. So I think if you want to talk to me about that one, we can talk about it after. But effectively, CAT software is really clunky, and I'm not certain year makes and models. You can pipe the data back through the CAT software and view it in there, and then try to output it a different way. And it's one of those things that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't.
All right, and we'll put Eric's information. You'll have it, Kathleen. So if you guys want to chat afterwards, like I said, feel free.
Yeah, that's a great question. So thank you for that, Kathleen. So another GPS style system. And this is one without a display. This is called a Geotab, and this is a Go 6. This is a few years old now, so you can even tell by the 3G icon that this is a few generations ago. They have newer, greater versions. I just like this example because it's something that I found on one of my inspections, and it was hidden. If you look at the picture on the right, you can see that there's some type of device, and there's a zip tie around it, and it looks like to just be in a mess of wires. Well, this device was in a semi, and it was up under the dash, behind the steering wheel, behind the lower instrument cluster with all the buttons and gauges and stuff. And I would have never known it was there, but I noticed that there was this port here was connected to the download port where I was trying to plug in. So I knew that maybe there was something, but I wasn't sure what. So I did my download. I actually didn't get any data. And so I was talking with my client who was on site with me. And one thing I noticed is every time I powered the truck to do the download or to check lights or whatever, I heard there was the truck's chime, which if you've ever been at a download, you'll know that you hear the chime or the air buzzer or some kind of ding, ding, ding constantly, and it's mind numbing. But there was one other chime that was just different, and it was only one time. It made a noise once, and it was this device. So I was able to find it and pull it out. And you can see that it actually has a little bars icon, a little what I call a GPS indicator, and it was receiving signal for both. So it was an active device. And the other side, the attorney was like, "Oh, I have no idea what that is." Turns out that it had full tracking of this truck. It was a beer truck, delivery truck, and they had GPS pings every 1/10 of a second, so 10 data points per second. So really high resolution for us with speeds, with accelerometers, with Gs. It captured the event, captured all the trips that day, captured the rollover of this semi, and instantly with that data, this case settled. Because it showed that the driver was not being truthful about what he said happened. So this was, for me and for our client, a great find. And it's something that you always need to be aware of because maybe the attorneys on the other side don't know. And if they're not told, there's no way to know this thing was there other than the fact that I heard it chiming. Another more traditional, and this is something that's, I think they're becoming less common, it's just a traditional Garmin. There's other brands too. These are things that we can all plug into and get information from. So these are things not to be overlooked. If there's one in a truck, we're going to try to see if we can power it on. We're going to try to plug in with the different softwares. And sometimes there's no software, you just plug a thumb drive in and then export all the data. But we've had instances where we've actually gotten a lot of great data from these things because they were in use at the time. And those pings, again, because tractor trailers especially, if you don't get that deceleration event or last stop, you have no data. But then if I can pull back the trip based on the Garmin, then I do have data, and I can use that to calculate speeds, general locations, and get something that we can actually use for reconstruction as opposed to just saying, "Oh, well, we didn't get anything." So this is an example of a triggered event that was from Qualcomm. And so this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. How would we get this information? What would it look like? This would be produced from whoever represented the tractor trailer that had the Qualcomm data in it. And you can see it's, you got some information. You have, this was an incident trigger. You got incident speed 60 miles an hour. You got a hard braking event, and there was a deceleration of 12 miles per hour per second. Well, so in this case, if we were able to download the tractor trailer, we would also expect there to be a download there. So with that, we could actually do a great comparison between this information. But sometimes we don't get to ever download the truck. This is all we get. So in this case, we were able to learn, the position and time of the incident. So we were able to confirm some things that maybe we're kind of guessing on, because sometimes those reported times are wrong, and maybe the exact GPS was wrong. And this one, it has a decent sampling rate, but it's not great. It's about every minute that we're getting a speed reported, and basically there's associated with this are GPS coordinates that we can plot. And so, for this 1 second per event it's not bad, but we typically want maybe a little bit more data, higher resolution, so to speak, so we can see the more drastic or the fast moving changes that happen when somebody slams on the brakes or speeds up. But this is still enough to plot. You can see a pretty consistent speed, speeding up 60, and then all of a sudden it's 53. Well, there's your trigger, and it's right at 0. And then you have it just slowing down and coming to final rest. So now we can tell when he locked up, how much speed he lost from impact and from slamming on the brakes, and about how far of a distance he went post impact. So if that's information that we didn't know before, now we can do some calculations and we can do some placement and understand an accident scenario way better than with just looking at some damage and some roadway evidence. But again, this would have to come from the account of the whoever runs the Qualcomm in this instance for this company. Here's another set of Qualcomm data. This is a little older. It's a little more basic, and you're getting some general ideas. So maybe if you got a question about, well, where did the truck come from that day? Where was he going? Was he on the route that he was supposed to be on? Was he on the road for too long? You can start to understand. You got things like a general location with coordinates, a speed, a direction. But you'll notice the sampling rate is way more spaced out than the last example. You've got 459, 57, and the next data point is 611, and the next one's 724. This is something where we can't really do much reconstructive work. We would just have to hope that we would see a triggering event, and we got a data point for that time. Maybe we'd have an idea of a speed that was being achieved at a certain point in time, but we'd have to verify that with other things to see if it's related to a crash or not. So maybe, again, not as helpful for me, but maybe helpful for you. Maybe it shows some information that you can deduce from this to ask some pointed questions of the driver or the safety manager or whatever. I've kind of discussed a lot of this. There's lots of information, this GPS data and these tracking devices. It helps us look at time, speed, distance, especially if it's a high enough resolution, we can do that. And again, when I say resolution, I'm just referring to the sampling rate, the amount of data that we get, and if it's every second or 3 times a second or 10 times a second or whatever. It allows you to look at logbooks. We can look at average speed. We can check, if he was coming from where they say they were going from, how many stops they've done, and it just gives you a background to ask questions. Or maybe you've already asked the questions and you get this after the fact. Maybe you'll have to go back and ask some more. So this is an example of a case where we had some GPS pings from a device. And in this case, it was super important because this is US 84, which separates between Alabama and Georgia, kind of the southern portions of both. And it's dark. It's a 4-lane highway divided by a grass median. There's no street lights. There's no towns really around. And we have a case where we're trying to figure out which car was going the wrong way on the wrong side of the road. And there was a witness in this case that said that our car was the vehicle traveling on the, what would be this side of the highway heading kind of northwest on this picture. We were able to download our client's GPS and the ping showed that our client was actually in fact heading the correct direction. And that the other driver was the driver that was going the wrong way, and that essentially the police, the first responders, and the skirt team that did the homicide report flipped this around and got it wrong. And so we had a download from our car, so we knew the speed, we knew the delta V, we knew all of that, but there was just it was such a high energy impact, and there were so many questions about, because essentially both vehicle drivers were killed. There was nobody to ask who was going the wrong way. Like, there was no way for us to figure it out, but we found in his car, his GPS that he was using, and we were able to pull these pings, get this information, and it really kind of made the case for us to prove that our guy was actually going the right way. So now we're going to move on, unless there's any major questions, to some video systems. And again, there's a lot of overlap with a lot of this stuff, right? There's a lot of, we're talking about GPS, we're talking about logs, we're talking about speeds. The technology in these vehicles, these heavy trucks, there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of repetitiveness, but it's just great because it allows us to really kind of confirm some things, and it gives us the information we need. So we talked a little bit, I mentioned Lytx Drive Cam, but essentially these cameras, and there's a couple of different manufacturers. These are professionally installed camera systems. These are not the suction cup variety that you buy from Best Buy or wherever, Amazon, and stick on your windshield and record stuff. These have other systems in the truck that they spider in and connect to the ECM sometimes. They give a lot of information. That sometimes there's accelerometers with them, so that you get Gs, so you can understand what's going on in the truck aside from just maybe a video or a speed from the GPS. They capture this data in lots of different formats. The primary ones we look at are, again, speed, brake, timing of things, when there's a triggering event, what was the truck's attitude, meaning was it yawing, sliding, was it rolling over? And so we get some great information from some of these things. So kind of an example. Sure.
Is DriveCam program and DriveCam Enterprise, are those for purposes of a preservation letter, would that be the appropriate way to, I guess, term it?
Yeah, and there's some other variations. And so what I would encourage you to do is we have kind of some lists that we'll provide clients when they say, we know there's a camera, we just need to know what to ask for. We can kind of match up the terminology because we don't want to ask for DriveCam Enterprise if they're using the other manufacturer, because that doesn't exist. And so they're just going to say, yeah, we don't have that, instead of being honest and just handing over. So you got to ask for the exact right thing with the right wording. But yeah, there's different levels, and I think the primary thing that refers to is there's the generic program of having the cameras in the car and the very basic information it entails, and then enterprise level management is more for like the bigger companies where they have a dashboard that they record things like safety scores, fuel usage, and some of those other things. So an example of a drive cam, and I think you can actually go to their website and there's more examples, but this is just a still shot frame. We'll get to video in a second, where I'm gonna take some water because I'm getting kind of raspy. So we have accelerometers here. We have forward and reverse, and we have lateral left and right. We also have a time. So this is going to be a countdown clock, and this is going to coincide with the triggering event in this video. And we also have a GPS speed, and it actually indicates for us. Sometimes this will be the speed that's pulling from the truck itself. Other times it's using the GPS, and that's where we're getting this from. So again, we've got, our acceleration data, our time to our incident, and now we move forward a frame, and this is right at our triggering event at 0. We've got still a forward acceleration, but now we have a half a G lateral acceleration. The brakes are now applied, and he's slowed down to 54 miles an hour. So again, you can have this information, and it's something it's a perspective we would have never had. We would have known what the driver was doing. We'll never see what was happening out the front with just a typical download. But in conjunction with what we want from a download, speeds and timing of braking and such, now we're getting this in visual format. And it's a lot easier now to understand what could have happened. And so we're going to show a video here. And this is just an example. So I'm going to let it play once, and then maybe I'll go through it a few more times and just kind of point some things out. So I just want to let it play. I'll apologize in advance if some of these videos we're going to show have some colorful language in them, but I think we'll all understand that it was maybe necessary. Okay, so if we can see, our guy was having just a bad day, and I just want to stop it and kind of show you a few things. So again, similar representation down here on the bottom. We've got our speeds, we got our time to our incident, we have accelerations, and you can see, out of his front windshield what he sees. You can see he's talking on the radio, and to me, the primary point of this video is he's actually looking towards where his radio is situated, and that's kind of maybe a little bit to the right. And he's having a very pointed conversation with somebody about something, but he's obviously not necessarily looking in front of him. And so as the video progresses, you'll see everybody start stopping, and at no point while they're stopping does he do anything, and he does not realize anything is happening in front of him until he puts the radio down. And so there's many seconds where he's just not looking in front. Now, if we would have had a download of this, we could have made assumptions, right? We could have looked at his speed, looked at the fact that he wasn't braking or anything like that, and there were no changes. So we can assume maybe he wasn't paying attention. But with this video, we now know he wasn't. And so if we watch it again, just kind of watch him and watch generally where he's looking when he puts this radio away. Then he turns back. And another thing, if we watch the data on the bottom, it's now counting up, right? So now we know that's your triggering event. That's the acceleration. So now it's recording because of that. But there's actually a reset here where it actually detects a rollover and starts a new counter. So it's counting up. And then when we get to 4 seconds, now it goes back to 0.5 seconds. So at 4 seconds, it realized we're rolling over. You can kind of see the attitude of him and the truck as it's starting to go over on its side. It stopped recording this event and picked up a new event. So for this data, we would have gotten a spreadsheet of data with this video that clearly showed there were 2 recorded events, which just gives us expanded information in both directions. And so we got another example here. This is looks like a city bus. He's looking down, checking something, and so I'm going to back up again and just focus on the driver, watch his head, and you can kind of see it right there. So he's looking at the road. Car's starting to slow down and turn in front of him. He looks and checks his phone. Looks. Oh crap! And that was a few seconds, right? And that's the beauty of these things. We can say, okay, you were actually looking down. You started to look down in 2.5 seconds. You look back up fully, maybe at 1 second. So we can say you covered this much distance while you were not looking at the road. Why did you do that? And so I'll play it again, kind of see the whole thing. So yeah, again, just wanting to note the facts of what these systems can offer. In these 2 instances, we've shown you that there's, a driver-facing camera and a frontal. I've already seen, and we have multiple active cases right now where we actually have cameras on the sides. There's some oblique cameras on the rear. We have 1 truck case where there's 7 cameras on it. So the perspectives that we can get from all of this information, it kind of really changes what we do. It makes a lot of cases easier to resolve one way or the other because you get some independent facts that the video doesn't lie. It's very easy to understand what happens in these cases. But having this video from on board is just it's unparalleled in what it can do for you in your case. It also kind of goes to stay with surveillance cameras, and we're going to get there in a second. But I want to give you an example of another case. We have a school bus case, and this is an instance where we were working on this case for a few years. We saw the cameras, were told they weren't working. We tried to download this school bus after this crash. We got some data, but not really what we needed because it was kind of limited. We actually got a lot of information off of our vehicle. We did a full reconstruction. We actually did a simulation and then a professional animation. So we did thousands of dollars worth of work. And then we got this video right before trial. And the video tells a story that, luckily for us, matches a lot of the work that we did. But you can just see, again, how much money was spent working on this reconstruction and time. 2.5, 3 years went by. And you get this video of this crash. And it's frozen, so we're going to back up and yeah, it doesn't want to play. Well, we made it so far without any technical problems. Here we go. So he's driving along. He kind of looks over at his favorite restaurant or whatever, and bang. And so I'm going to back up and hopefully it'll play for us again. Yep. So essentially, our guy changes lanes in front of him, and this bus stops ahead of him. And on the back of the bus, there's a sign that says stop. So our client stops. And this bus driver obviously doesn't. What's great about this video is you can see that our client's taillights were working in the SUV. So we know there was warning beforehand to this bus driver that our guy was slowing down and stopping. The other thing is because it was so long after we got this video, the driver had been deposed, and he said, "Oh yeah, no, the guy cut me off. The guy in the SUV, like I was just over there in my lane minding my business." He doesn't mention the fact that the bus was stopped. He doesn't mention the fact that the bus had a sign on the back that said stop. He just says, "Oh yeah, I got cut off," and the guy just got in front of me and slammed on his brakes. I don't know what happened. Well, now we understand more. So again, getting these videos, understanding what's in them is just critical. Another fun thing, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this, you can get video from these surveillance systems that are on intersections from traffic engineers. Every municipality is different, but many have policies of retention. And while they don't save just events when they see a crash, like they're not always monitoring them, they're not always aware of, just acutely aware when a crash occurred. If you get to them quick enough, you can typically, if you know the time of your crash, you can get this video. And so I'm going to show you an example, and just I want you to pay attention to, it's going to be this video, and I want you just to pay attention to this upper corner. So you see a red car makes a U-turn, and then there's a line of work vans that stop, and then the white SUV just goes for it. And so this is an instance where we find out later, and we had this video first, that when the van guys stopped, they were actually waving the white car through, like, we're already slowed down. This turns into a turn lane. So I think their thinking was, we'll just let this car go. Fortunately for our client, the attorney that we're working with, these people stay at the scene and they're witnesses, and we had their information because I think that they were actually also brought into suit for waving the car through. And so again, you don't always know the details of what happens in these things, but you can kind of see with video, it just shows us exactly what matters. And, you get a perspective that you never would have had, and it kind of makes these cases easier to make decisions on. So I think we're ready to pause here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric. We really appreciate this. All right, I'm going to bring in you guys real quickly. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back to it because this has been really interesting, Eric. And I know that you guys are going to have a little more questions, so be sure to have those come into the Q&A box. But I'm so excited because we have Cody here with us with Box AE, and he's going to share with you guys some of the incredible work that they're doing over there at this company. I know John Romano, Eric Hertz, like so many of us are really, really enjoying working with you, Cody. So thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say today.
Yeah, thanks, Ginger. And Eric, this is a great presentation. We are a science and engineering graphics studio. And so I'm an engineer by trade and have been through accident recon school. And but we primarily focus on the graphics, and that's illustrating your opinion. And so I just wanted to show kind of some examples right in the line of what Eric has been talking about, some of the stuff that we've done. And just want to share that really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And can you guys see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So just like Eric was talking about, we've got the Bosch download. And so what typically happens is we can grab all this data, right, from your expert. They provide it to us, and we've been trained in this, so we can look at this and know what is going on here. And to a jury, Eric, you can probably attest to this. They don't, that means nothing to them. They'll say, okay, yeah, well, maybe he was speeding, and that's what they can deduce, And so, but what we do is we take that and we can turn this into data. And so we take that, and we either get the Excel data from the expert. Here's one that we just did ourselves. And then we cross-checked it with the expert. And we get these data points, as Eric would say, and the resolution would be every half a second, right? And so here's a commercial vehicle. It's very interesting. This is a commercial vehicle. This is an oil truck driver. And hit a family of children. And I think mother died or father died, mother's in a coma, really big time collision. And so what we're trying to demonstrate here is the gross negligence. Liability was already determined, but that doesn't always mean you don't need an animation. Sometimes they make it even more clear. And let me demonstrate for you. So the first warning sign was the US 59 junction sign. And what we're trying to show is that there was plenty of warning signs that there was an oncoming intersection. Here's the first painted rumble strip providing warning of an upcoming intersection. The third encountered traffic device informed the driver that there was a stop ahead. Here's another rumble strip, warning of an upcoming intersection. Here's a fourth traffic sign that explained that there's directions to nearby towns, indicating there's another intersection. So at the intersection, there was a stop sign, 2 flashing lights. You should stop at the junction. So the Ford driver missed numerous warning signs that a junction and necessary stop was approaching. And so he caused this accident with his gross negligence. Now we're going to play it in real time. And so Eric, what we did was, because we only have the 5 seconds of data, he testified that he was going 65 miles an hour before that. And so we just simply plotted it through. And so this is in real time. And the dings are indications that he should have known.
Mm-hmm.
And the EDR data is at the bottom right. Kills some people, injures children. Also, we take it from another point of view here, because the terrain was slightly, and we can grab the survey data, Eric. So if you ever have topo data or stuff like that, total station, we grab that and we can easily, we speak your language. But look at that. I mean, man, that's gross negligence. Another thing that really made me think, and I didn't end up, I wasn't going to show this one, but after you showed the dash cam stuff, I thought, man, this is incredible. That does really tell the story. And sometimes the dash cam footage doesn't tell the whole story.
Sure.
Okay. And so, and you need some kind of engineering graphics to help. And so that was just an indicator of this is what actually happened. And it looks like that dump truck just kisses that bus at first glance, right? So it was raining, hydroplaning. But what we do is we take that dash cam data or the bus recorded data, and we're able to show this bus driver did not have specific injuries before, and then had real bad injuries after. And I want to show you, if I can just rewind that so you can see, I'm going to pause it right here, right there. You can see that dump truck coming on the left side, but look at how minute this injury looks at first glance. It doesn't look like much. And if you showed that, the defense was probably, oh man, I'm going to show this. And then they're going to see, this guy had pre-existing conditions, blah, blah, blah. But what we do is we superimpose the spine. And because of the lap belt, okay, there was a lot of shearing in his lumbar section. And we can show an MRI and show the lateral movements, but that belt was pulling on his lumbar, and he was already an elderly gentleman. And so we can go into disc herniations, and a lot of this stuff is kind of multidisciplinary. So we can pull the medical records, get medical illustrators on this, and make it engineering, physics based and accurate in that respect. But the cervical spine whipped a lot more and had a lot more differentiation in the G-force. But again, it's a demonstrative. We were able to show which cervical discs were injured. And so it's just it's a better way to show certain things. You mentioned pedestrians. I just want to show this last one and then I'll be done. But you just got me all excited, Eric. So one of the things that you'll probably hear, Eric, is, oh, I never saw him, right? Sometimes they're coached. I just heard a thud, right? All the time. But again, elderly gentleman. Let me show you something really quickly. Let me go to the quality control. This is, and we were able to use photogrammetry to show where he was actually hit. These are cropped, but we got some context and we were able to see where his final resting position was. And then based on the speed of the vehicle, we're able to determine exactly where, pretty close in a reasonable vicinity, where this man was struck. But you could see his clothes, his gloves, his shoes, even his height. He was 71 inches tall. We verify that. Okay. And so now he's a 75-year-old man. You tell me if this guy just popped out of nowhere crossing the street. And you know, like with the ACTAR stuff and all that, you get reasonable walking speeds for pedestrians. Eric, so you would know all that, and you would tell me, hey, have this guy going, you know, this speed, or
3 or 4 feet per second.
Yeah, there you go. Or a range, right?
Yep.
So we show, okay, you should have seen it, but then, and we showed 3 different scenarios because we weren't exactly sure where he walked across the road, but we knew he was on his way to the hospital. But look at this. I never saw him. I just heard a thud. It just doesn't, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, my favorite is when they do that, and then they also say, I never saw him, and then you look at the scene and there's 30 feet of skid marks leading up to the point of impact.
You're right. Yes, exactly. So anyway, those are the 3 scenarios. We even can replicate lighting conditions. This was in the morning, and you could see the sun and the shadows. And so a lot of fun here. So Eric, I really appreciate your stuff, and
that's
call me sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can work together for sure.
It's so realistic, Cody. Like, I still can't get over all this. And you've done just about every scenario for like any case out there. Every time we do one of these webinars, I really appreciate that you really draw in what you guys do and make it work for what we're talking about. So thank you. I hope everybody will definitely write down your information. I know you're going to put that in the chat box for everyone as well, but you guys are going to save Cody's information, please. You know, you're doing good stuff, and we appreciate everything that you're working on. So thanks, Cody.
Thanks, Ginger. And Eric, I'll be calling you, man. I may have a case.
Sounds like a plan.
All
right, guys. And all right, Eric, we're going to get back to you because we're going to finish up a little bit more, and we're going to do as much as we can and then get to some questions if you guys have any of those, and might even do like a part 2, right, Eric?
Yeah, me and Jessica have been chatting, and we're kind of laying out that. We're kind of thinking maybe we're going to pause here, but you know, so effectively want to make sure, you know, if anybody has any questions about anything I've covered, they want more detail or specifics, we can definitely do that.
Actually, I have one more announcement real quick. I see that Dawn is with us, so I wanted her to share real quickly about what they do over at OnPoint.
Great.
So let me bring her in real fast, because they do amazing work over there as well. And I see that she is here with us. Let's see. There she is. Hi, Dawn.
How are you, Ginger?
Great. It is so good to see you, and thank you for being with us today. If you can share a little bit more about what OnPoint litigate you guys do over there, because I know John Romano, the entire group, loves working with you guys, and he always raves about your pain and suffering reports. But you do a lot more than just that, right, Don?
Well, he does love our pain and suffering reports, but yes, we do an awful lot more than that. And there's an awful lot of legal nurse firms out there, so it always leads me to question, why pick OnPoint? What's different about us? And what makes us so special as a team is that we're a team of nurses that are going to listen to your specific needs and customize services. So we're not one size fits all. We provide chronologies, pain and suffering reports that John talks about. We do summary and analysis of records. And, you know, we have attorneys with all different kinds of cases and different types of firms. And some attorneys are looking for tremendous details in these reports. They plan to use the nurse writing the reports as a fact witness. But some attorneys want something that's kind of broader, less detailed, and they have no intention of using the nurse as a fact witness. So, you know, we can in some cases actually incorporate pain and suffering into a chronology. So we talk to you about what your needs are, what your intentions are, and make sure that we give you the report that's going to be best suited for your case. When we're doing a summary and analysis, one of the things that we look at is, might you need experts? And if so, what type of experts? I have more than 35 years of nursing experience. So I talk to attorneys all the time, and they call and they say, oh, I want this particular type of expert. And as we discuss the case, we might come to a conclusion that, that's really not the best expert to give you the opinion that you need on this case, particularly with the number of specialties and subspecialties that are out there. So I'll help you determine the best type of expert, and then I'll locate an expert specific to that case. So I don't always send the same orthopedic surgeon or the same interventional radiologist for every case. Instead, I get some details from you. I'll discuss the fact pattern with the expert. And when I send somebody to you, it's somebody that's been specifically selected and vetted for your particular case. The last thing I want is for you to waste money paying an expert to review a case and then say, oh, well, I really think that you would be better served by, having a surgeon look at this. We also can organize, bookmark, and OCR records so that when they go to the expert, they're already orderly and you're not paying expert rates to have them go through records. And sometimes attorneys kind of say, oh, I don't think I need that. And I think they just don't always want to spend the money to get them organized. And then I'll have an expert call me and say, this attorney sent me records, either electronic or sometimes old school paper. And it's, a banker's box full of records that they spend hours going through. So we can get that all done. And in the long run, it definitely is more cost effective for you. And if you're thinking, why have experts? I use the same experts. Well, maybe it's time to see what's out there. When you call me and we talk about an expert, it costs nothing to talk to me. I'll go through and vet an expert. I'll send you a CV and a fee schedule. And if you like them, you use them. And if you don't, it didn't cost you anything. And of course, you've heard about life care plans today. And life care plans are terrific for catastrophic cases. But if you have smaller cases where you have somebody that had an injury, maybe they had, some injections or even a spinal surgery, but they're ambulatory and, living life, it might not really be worth it to pay for a life care plan. So instead, a lot of times we'll recommend a medical cost projection. And we use a life care planner to go through and work solely from the treating or IME physician reports and make projections about what the costs will be over this person's lifetime. So much more cost effective for you in calculating future medical costs than paying for a full life care plan. So we really try and listen to your needs, customize their services, and support your team. And I'd love the opportunity to talk to you about a case and see how we could work together. So I'll post my info on the chat box and look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dawn. And thank you for being here with us today. And you guys, again, another great company that we highly recommend. So be sure to save Dawn's information and stay in touch with her as well. And Dawn, we'll see you again here very soon. Okay.
Thanks, Ginger.
Thank you. All right, Erica and Jessica, or Eric and Jessica, back to you.
So I think we've heard some really great information today. I think it's very helpful. Thank you, Eric. And what Ginger said is we still have a lot more to go. And since it is approaching 4:30, or it is 4:30, we are going to come back and do a part 2. I know we still have subjects such as heavy truck brake systems, vehicle infotainment, the Toyota Stream technology. We also have the download, which I think if you haven't seen a download, it's definitely something you want to come back and view and see, and then you'll get the report so you can actually have that in your hand and then look back to how you witnessed it, how it actually goes down. So I hope that everybody will come back. I know Ginger is great. She'll set it up. She'll get the information out to you. And I look forward to part 2 and seeing everybody back here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And what I'll do is, Eric, you'll be able to send me part of the, slides that you've sent today that I will send out to everybody after this webinar. Okay. And then we'll get our new date set for part 2, and I'll announce that with you guys as well. But thank you guys so much for watching. Before we go, though, I do have Ted Mullis who's going to pop in real quick because he's going to announce the special copy giveaway. And he will be here in just a moment as well. And let me see, I think we had one more question. Yep, looks like Michael had a question about the slides, and yes, we will make sure that I email it to you guys after this webinar. So stay tuned for my email, and I'll make sure you guys get all the contact information for Eric and for Jessica and all of our amazing partners. But Ted, I see you're here with us. Thank you so much for popping in. I know that you're coming in with some good news. So tell us, who is the lucky winner of today's 4 bags of freshly roasted Ethiopia style coffee?
Yeah, sure. So I'm excited to announce it's Colleen Quinnell, and she's out of Columbia, South Carolina. So congratulations for some
Nice.
great caffeine.
Congratulations, Colleen. And actually, this makes me very happy, Ted, because I believe she's an amazing paralegal out of this firm who's going to be speaking, gosh, in just a couple of weeks in the end of September. I'm going to be launching all of our brand new webinars for September. We have an amazing lineup, and I can't wait to have her featured. So congratulations, Colleen.
Excellent.
I hope that you enjoy this coffee, and Ted will both reach out to her after this webinar. And don't worry, guys, if you didn't win, there's another chance. Actually, this Thursday, we're doing another TBI webinar, which is going to be featuring Lynn Keel, a great attorney out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So go ahead and sign up for that. She's going to be sharing more details with me that I'll be able to share with you. And then our webinar tomorrow that was scheduled, it was a nursing home abuse webinar with actually Ingrid, who's with OnPoint. She's actually we're rescheduling that to next Wednesday. So we're still doing it, but I'm just going to be announcing that to everybody who's already registered. So next webinar is on Thursday. Come back. You get another chance to win coffee, right, Ted?
Sounds great. I love giving it away.
All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Part 2 is coming. We've got a lot more to cover. And thank you so much for all of your support. Hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.